Hi! In Nigeria, kings are powerful, often regarded as the next to the gods and are rarely untouchable. But do you know that somewhere in southern Nigeria, a king has been sentenced to death by the courts before? Lay back, grab your popcorn as I take you through the course of history. Hi everybody, welcome to Akata TV. Before I get into today's story, let me tell you a bit about Ile-Ife in Ekiti, where our story takes place. Ile-Ife was reportedly founded over 800 years ago by the first Alaye, Obalufon Alaye-Mori, who eventually became the third Oni of ancient Ile-Ife. Obalufon Alaye-Mori was about the only known king who reigned over two kingdoms. He first ruled as the third Oni of Ile-Ife, having succeeded his father, Obalufon Ogbobodinrin, but vacated the throne on the advice of the Ile-Ife kingmakers for his uncle, the Ife war hero Oromiyan, who became the fourth Oni of Ife. He left Ife to found Efon after vacating the Ile-Ife throne, but was called back to Ile-Ife by the kingmakers to become the fifth Oni after the death of Oromiyan. He thereafter left the throne of Ile-Ife to his son Adudu Oronku to reign after him. Today, if you're interested in seeing a town full of hills, Ile-Ife in Ekiti State is the place to go. Now to our story, told in the simplest way possible. Our story started on a Monday morning on the 10th of January 1949 when the 15-month-old girl of one Mr. and Mrs. Ojo named Adeniwura suddenly went missing while playing in the compound. At first, the parents and neighbors assumed she had just strayed, but it became extremely worrying after they could not find her. Adeniwura's mother, an historian have reported, was on the edge of lunacy, screaming, "My child has been kidnapped," around the town. Immediately, Mr. Ojo and members of his family gathered and decided to report the case to the Alaye of Efon, as was the usual custom where the people report their problems to the king for solution. Only this time, the king was part of the problem. With pitiful tears in his glassy eyes, hot mucus meandering down his nostrils, and glistening sweat covering his dark skins, they outlined what happened to the king. After listening to the parents, the Alaye of Ile-Ife, Kabiyesi Oba Samuel Adeniran Asusumasha Atewogboye II, told the parents to return home, that the issue would be looked into. He immediately organized a search party to look for the missing child, a search that was futile. The community, not wanting to leave anything to chance, reported via the community police to the Central Investigations Department (CID) in Lagos. By 10th of February 1949, a crack team of police detectives led by Chief Inspector Arua arrived in Ile-Ife and within 48 hours were able to establish that the little Adediwura may have fallen a victim to the antics of ritual murderers. It was no small case, as it was reported by the Daily Times newspaper at the time. Within days, the police team detected and arrested three suspects: Enoch Falayi, Gabriel Olaribinjo, and Daniel Ojo, all linked to the murder. It was at this point that it became clearer that the king may have been involved because one of the suspects, Falayi, was a native doctor and the personal spiritualist to the king. Well, it didn't take long for one of the accused person to confess that it was the native doctor who kidnapped the toddler. In his confession, he said the native doctor grabbed the baby, tucked the child under his flowing traditional garb called an agbada, and whisked her off to his house. At night, he then told his wife to carry the child on her back to the house of another person, who then took the child straight to the palace. As it was with medieval time human sacrifices, the girl was brought before the king, Kabiyesi Oba Samuel Adeniran Asusumasha Atewogboye II, and butchered right in his presence. After the bloody killing, the king then brought out kola nut and made everyone present to swear an oath of secrecy. Now breathe deeply and don't close your eyes because the details get ugly from here. The body of the toddler was then mutilated and dismembered. Her eyes was gouged out of their sockets and put in a container carried by the first individual. Then her tongue was sliced off and put in another container held by a second individual. Both individuals then ferried this body part through a door that led to the living quarters of the king. After completing this phase of their criminal ritual session, they took what remained of the lifeless body of the girl to the forest around the Christian Missionary Society (CMS) church and buried it there. Absolutely shocking, right? At the time this event happened in 1949, Nigeria was yet to gain independence and was merely a protectorate of the British Empire under King George VI. Now back to our story. As the people of Ile-Ife were trying to recover from the shock that their arrested monarch could be the brain behind the savage killing in the land, the case was then transferred to Akure High Court to be presided over by Justice N.S. Pollard. A total of 21 witnesses, including the wife of the native doctor, testified and provided evidence of how the herbalist grabbed Adediwura and stuffed her under his agbada. In a testimony that added more nails to the royal casket, one of the suspects arrested testified that the child was taken to the palace the following day and it was in the presence of the king that the innocent kid was murdered with brutal cuts. But the defense counsels were unyielding and insisted that the three key witnesses were accomplices and therefore their evidence needs to be corroborated. They even went ahead to say that some of the confessional statements were made under duress. Who confesses to a crime as grievous as killing without being an accomplice? But at the end of it all, Justice Pollard pronounced the native doctor, Falayi, and Gabriel Olabirinjo guilty. But the third suspect, Daniel Ojo, was lucky. He was acquitted for lack of substantial evidence against him. So what happened to the criminal king? The Crown Counsel submitted that the evidence revealed clearly that he did not only have the intention to kill but also took part in the ritual murder of baby Adediwura. But lawyer to the king, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, yes, the premier of the Western region and the face on Nigeria's 100 naira note, tried to absolve the king of any wrongdoing, stating that since the king helped organize a search party, that alone was enough to wash the royal robe clean of all blood. He also blamed the royal scandal on enemies of the king who wanted to deal with him by involving him on the gruesome killing and branded and provided as circumstantial. Awolowo's speech fell on deaf ears as the judge declared the Alaye of Efon-Alaye, Kabiyesi Oba Samuel Adeniran Asusumasha Atewogboye II, guilty and sentenced him to death. You think it ended there? No way. The accused person moved straight to the West African Court of Appeal, WACA, WACA, where they appealed the decision of the trial court. The presiding judge at the time, Justice John Verity, who heard the case alongside two other judges, held that even though these findings were circumstantial, the statement of other accused persons proved the king's guilt. While Chief Awolowo did his job, the Kabiyesi did not personally deny the confessions. Again, Kabiyesi Oba Samuel Adeniran Asusumasha Atewogboye II, the 43rd Alaye of Efon-Alaye, his herbalist and one of his servants, and Gabriel Olabirinjo were all sentenced to death. They were hanged in 1949. Intriguing, right? Don't miss any historical detail at this time, as well as stores and travel gist. Subscribe and turn on notification, and don't forget to share, okay? Until next time, when I will be giving you more exciting information on other parts of Africa, take care.